Brother, that new intro slaps. Let me tell you that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 16th episode of Shot of Nostalgia, where we are diving back into 1996 WCW Daddy. Good old Mike Belcaster here, as always, with my homeboy, my brother from another mother, ACEFIELD Retro, the 8th of the Turnbuckle Tavern. 8th, how are you doing?
Doing well, Stephen ACEFIELD, live from the No Cell Studios here in beautiful Long Island, New York. We are getting ready for our 16th episode, and what an episode to top from last week. Thank you so much from Matt and the Extra Cooler gang to get coming on here and hyping it up on their pages. It was a rousing success, I would say, right?
Listen, man, I had a blast, as I always do with you, but my God, when we get that good, rich WCW content, God damn it. It really makes for a good episode, and last week could not have been better. And this week is just going to keep that vibe and that train rolling, if you will.
I put some pressure on that episode because of the fact that we've been hyping it up for the longest time, and I knew we'd have Matt. I knew he would crush it, but as far as the content living up, we really didn't know how we would feel about the Bash the Beach and everything went on with Hogan until it actually went down. And I think everything that happened, not only that we talked about in the newsletter, but seeing Hogan turn heel again and seeing it in context of 1996, it was absolutely incredible. And man, it's going to be hard to top in 1996. And I understand that throughout the fall they do. So I'm really excited to see where they go.
Me too, man. I'm super pumped. Just good stuff, good quality wrestling, good quality storytelling. We're getting the best of every little aspect of pro wrestling here. So I'm fucking here for it, as I always am. And I'm sure you are as well.
So I know, as promised, I know there's been some conversation about what our season 2 would be. And there's been, requests and conversation about what they would like it to be, with putting our two heads together and talking to the two bad Chads about what we think would be the best possible content to put here in the tavern. We finally have an announcement of what our season 2 will be. And of course, it's not going to be until November of 2022. We still have a long way to go with the rest of 1996 WCW. So don't fret. We're going to continue to give you everything you need WCW, but we want to look into the future and talk about what's going to be on next. And without further ado, we got 1995 ECW. There's the full schedule. And of course, you see the full dates, and we're going to try our best to stick to it. So far, we've stuck to every date we've put out there for the WCW 1996, and I fully expect that we're going to do that again here. But we have some great events, and we're not doing the full year, Mike Belcast. We're just doing the 13 main, I guess you call them pay-per-views, but like main staple events they had in ECW.
Hell yeah. Oh, I'm loving the fact that we are going to go extreme right here on Shot of Nostalgia. ECW, be it 95, 96, 97, even going 98. It was some of my favorite storytelling and pro wrestling. It just happening right in front of our faces. So this is going to be a blast. You can see Sabu. I feel like Sabu right there with the nail in my mouth. I'm ready to roll, brother. So it's going to be a good time.
So the best part about this is that we are still going to dive into the newsletter. And I know you and I were talking off air about it, that there is a little bit of an abbreviated version in the newsletter. Meltzer, of course, covers ECW, but it's not at length as they did with WCW because it wasn't quite not a powerhouse, but it wasn't quite the third promotion yet. But there are some interesting things we're going to tie in. Of course, we're going to tie in our good buddies, and you're one of them from the fucking GCW show, because I think there's a lot to be said in comparison with comparing the two of them, 1995 ECW and 2022 GCW. There's a lot of comparisons you can make about what they're both doing to the wrestling world.
100%, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to doing the comparing and contrasting of what a GCW now looks like compared to a 95 ECW. So I cannot wait. ECW is one of my favorite heartfelt pastimes. And it's like a double shot of nostalgia for me. So I am super, super pumped, man.
So stay tuned for that. And I'm sure that Chad's going to release a really cool looking shirt that has that new logo on it with the barbed wire. Great job. And as always, Chad crushes it with the graphics. So thank you for that. But let's get into it, man. Before we get into the newsletter, just going to show you the graphic here. You guys can follow it on Instagram and see what the shows are covering. We, of course, are covering the July 8th and the July 15th episode of Monday Nitro. And each week, as we continue to dive deep into 1996, we're going to go through them line by line and talk about the freshly watched events. And if you guys are new to this, go back into the archives a bit and go check out the last few episodes. I mean, maybe if you want to just binge the pay-per-views, you want to check out Slamboree, you want to talk about Great American Bash, Bash at the Beach, and then join us here because we are a couple weeks away from Hog Wild, live from Sturgis, the motorcycle rally. Man, do you remember watching that when you were a kid?
I absolutely loved Hog Wild. I thought it was one of the most brilliant, wildest concepts in pro wrestling, and it actually worked. Seeing, Big Bubba, not the wrestler, but the guy, a couple yards away from the ring on his motorcycle, revving his engines when people are coming out. How more jacked up can you get for it? And yeah, man, I fucking love Hog Wild, so I'm looking forward to that. I mean, we had a great week here as well, so I'm super, super pumped. As you guys don't know, or if you watched and you do know, we're live at MGM's studios at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And my goodness, I love the aesthetics. I love everything about it. It's so cool. It was fun. It's good shit, man.
And of course, we'll get into that and the reason that they're there. And if you guys remember, we did mention a few episodes ago that we knew this was coming. It's kind of bad timing, but it also kind of worked out. But we'll talk about exactly what we mean by that. Let's get into happy hour. What are whistles? Take a sip of the drinks and let's get going here.
Brother.
All right. So we are going to dive deep into the newsletter. And of course, the first newsletter we're getting into is July 8th. And I had teased this in the last episode, but we had so much content to cover with the Hogan heel turn with Matt here that I just breezed over it. But I felt like we'd be doing an injustice if we didn't at least talk about it because it paints the picture of the craziness that is 1996. And even though it's not WCW, could have been. So Jim Helwig, also known as the Ultimate Warrior, didn't appear at any of his scheduled dates after working television on June 25th in La Crosse, Pennsylvania. At the house show in Indianapolis on 6/28, it was announced he wasn't there due to transportation problems. So before I get into more of the issues there, were you a fan of Warrior growing up? And then where did you start to sour on him if you ever did?
Man, I don't think you could not have been a fan of Warrior, like when you're that little age. The action figures, the whole mystique about him, craziness, always cutting wild ass promos, drinking the space fuel, flying to the moon, brother. But yeah, I never was like super diehard. I was always a Hulkamaniac at heart. So when Warrior beat Hogan, I was crying. It was a mess when I was a kid. So I preferred my Hulkamaniacs, but Warrior had this like I said, this mystique, this aura around him that it was hard not to pay attention to him. So I was not a Warrior fan, but I was not a Warrior fan.
So while on tour on the June 29th show in Detroit, the wrestlers were given word that Helwig was through. Either he had quit or was fired. Nobody was sure about it, which was the same thing, except in this specific wartime situation, it's a huge distraction. If Helwig were to quit, he would be unable to work for WCW for the remainder of his contract, which would believe to have been 14 months. If he was strictly fired, he could work anywhere he wanted after the termination, although WWF could suspend him for a while before firing him, similar to what they did with Vader, putting him on ice for some time to keep him from going to WCW. We mentioned this on the AW wrap-up show. I know you missed it last night, but there was some conversation about just Tony Khan actually freezing contracts while guys are hurt, because I know that Vince got a lot of heat for that when he did it to Rey Mysterio. Then eventually he did it to Bryan Danielson, and Danielson had to get healthy in order to get back. So speaking of history repeating itself, Eric Bischoff is doing much of the same here, and so is WWF. So it's not like people are getting mad about something that was already happening years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. Grow up, man.
So the reason I bring this stuff up is because there was conversation that Warrior could have been the third man. And obviously all this went down before the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view on July 7th. And there was a lot of conversation about Warrior and why he came back and trying to do the comic book deal. And apparently that's what really fueled the issues between them. So according to one company source, it was a problem having to do with marketing dispute, and reports elsewhere stated that Warrior found out about something with his likeness being merchandise that he didn't know about, got mad about, and wanted to change his whole deal around it. The gossip among the wrestlers was he was unhappy with his WrestleMania payoff. Warrior legitimately earned $550,000 at WrestleMania 7 and may have earned more the prior year for his match with Hogan. At one point in 92, he held McMahon up for at a Survivor Series event, refusing to wrestle until he received $1 million payoff before the pay-per-view event to go out there. According to the lawsuit filed and then dropped, McMahon agreed to that figure, and blah, blah, blah. We all know the story with Warrior. And this is sort of tale as old as time. We go back to before Double or Nothing with all the rumors of MJF, and I think now it's safe to say it's a work, right?
Yeah.
But there was precedent set, whether it was Warrior or whether it was Jeff Jarrett. There's been times where talent has held up management and refused to do a job. And I think MJF had just as much leverage as anybody else did. So what were your thoughts on this with Warrior? And do you think, I mean, wrestling is one of those places that forgiveness happens at all times. And if you can make money, anyone's welcome back with Vince and WWE. And obviously with new regime with Triple H, we'll see how he operates. What was your thoughts on this with Warrior?
You know, I think Warrior just kind of seemed like an asshole, and just be honest, like there was no need to be holding people up for pays and stuff like that. He was great. I'm sure he was making a killing on merchandising alone. And I'm sure that was part of his contract. I don't understand the animosity Warrior was holding inside of his own being. You know, he was always salty with WWF and Vince McMahon, and like we've seen through time, like later down the road, he signs with WCW for that horrible match with Hulk Hogan. Yeah, but like again, I was a little kid. I was hyped. I was just pumped to see Hogan Warrior go at it again. But like, yeah, man, it's just being a baby. Like, get your fucking money, go do your job. You're getting hired to pay, or you're getting hired to work. You make your pay. Just do it. Like, what's the complaint? Like, you don't need to. The diva-ness does not need to be brought into pro wrestling. I don't think. I think that they should lay it down and just. It's a job, man. You got to go out there and do your job.
So circling this back to our time and place with the NWO, of course, we talked about the rumors that it could have been Mabel, it could have been Hakushi, it could have been Bret Hart. And let's fantasy book here. Say it is Warrior coming out to be the third man. We know it wouldn't be the same as Hogan. I'm not even going to ask you that question. How flat would it fall, and how long does the NWO last if he's the guy?
Ooh. I don't know how flat it would fall. I honestly can't say it would fall flat. It might have worked. If Warrior was willing to embrace that kind of outsider vibe, who knows what we would have seen. I mean, he was a very entertaining character as it was. If he toned down a little bit and got more real, like if Jim Helwig was the guy and it wasn't the Warrior, how crazy would that be? I think that would have fucking shook the rafters of any building that it happened at. But I don't know, man. I think it probably would have had shorter legs, but I think more time going on, I think we would have seen more people joining. So it kind of would have helped out the cause a little bit. I don't think Helwig was perfectly well balanced to make it work.
Yeah,
I mean, guy was a rocket. You know, he was always like, oh, let's fucking go. Yeah.
Wasn't a gimmick. I don't think it. I mean, he was definitely every bit as Warrior. I mean, eventually changed his legal name to Warrior, but that's neither here nor there. But I agree with you. I think you had mentioned during one of the newsletters we went through that you could picture Jim Helwig during the Attitude Era, and I never quite pictured it because I don't know, maybe I was just stuck in my brain of seeing him with the face paint and the tassels and the wild hair. But I think if you put like a leather coat on him, take away the paint, have him get a live microphone, I think for better or for worse, people want to see what he would do because he's, as you mentioned before, not to use the hyperbole of loose cannon, but he really was. And I think he's unpredictable. I don't know if Eric Bischoff wanted a piece of that because at least Hogan, he's saying the things off his chest that he actually felt. I mean, there was some truth to that promo he cut in the ring at Bash the Beach as trash was raining down on him. But I think Hogan can be reined in. He understands time and place. And I think, as you see time and time again, Warrior goes into business for himself. And what happens when the NWO, if it did take off to that level, he would think it's his intellectual property, wants to make a comic book out of it. and then all of a sudden you need him to show up during one of the biggest nights of the year, and he decides to do the same thing he did. So, yeah. But pure kayfabe wise, I mean, I guess it could make sense and would have at least my antennas up, but I don't think anyone would have had the impact Hogan would have had.
Listen, man, I'm saying if he smeared the face paint, made it look a little crazy, and he came out, cut his hair, I mean, if he debuted with a brand new look and mentality, it might have went somewhere. I'm not saying it would have completely shit the bed, but I'm pretty happy the way history played out, and I don't think it was done better than it could have been. So
yeah, who's
sorry,
to say
Jim.
if Warrior could have got out of his own way and accepted and stayed around? I mean, there's so many chances that he could have just been around as one of those guys that eventually he would have rose up the top of the card again. But I think he was his own worst enemy, as we saw throughout history. But it is an interesting thought about him potentially being involved in that timeline, because he's such a cartoonish golden age wrestler that we just picture at WrestleMania 6 in all his glory. But I think more so than a lot of the guys, I mean, I think about Big Boss Man, where he eventually evolved to, the character changes. And I think Helwig had the ability to at least present himself differently. And that's an interesting thought, at least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look at Macho Man. You could say the exact same thing about Macho Man, but Macho Man had the ability to change with it. So eventually he loses the cowboy hat. He loses all the tassels. He starts coming out with the cut t-shirt, the bandana. He's ready to roll. He's taking on Diamond Dallas Page, one of his best feuds ever. And if there was a way that Jim Helwig could incorporate that into his persona, I think it would have done very well, but I just don't see that happening. I think he was just fucking batshit crazy, and
yeah,
it was just gonna be the way it was. And yeah, I mean, even in, like, if you think Attitude Era, he would have had to have gone through a change. You could not roll he couldn't be the one guy rocking the face paint with the long hair, all fucking steroided out, ready to, bro, let's fucking go. Like, take it easy, Jim. It's hard. It's a hard ship to sail.
But similar to Bruno Sammartino, unwillingness to change, we saw that the fans eventually, I wouldn't say revolted against him, but they were indifferent, which is almost worse.
Yeah.
And when he appeared at this WCW Northeastern tour, people really didn't care. And that's sort of really sad. And I think if he had stuck around, I think part of Warrior's lore is the fact that his stardom was, I guess, shown as bright as any other star in the history of wrestling, but it was such for a short period of time that it flickered out. And I think that also adds to the legend of him.
Oh, absolutely. But even like when he debuted back in WCW to go after Hogan with the One Warrior Nation. Yeah, it just didn't hold up. And I think that's why it was so short-lived, and it was a wet fart, because it was just like, oh, and Hogan didn't want to fucking job the Warrior. It was just, at this point, Hogan's already established. He's the guy, it's his company, it's his shit, blah, 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 all over again. But I don't see Warrior coming in and, making changes on demand. And it didn't happen when he signed with WCW. So maybe there was a willingness on his end to work on certain things, but who fucking knows?
Who knows? And we mentioned the main star of all this in the July 15th newsletter. We talked about Hogan. He turned heel and all that. And it was what everyone remembers at Bash to the Beach. And what I really wanted to mention was what Dave Meltzer had said in the newsletter about the match that you and I spoke about. I think it was everybody's match of the week, Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis, which was described as, this is literally what was said, the first great match of the 21st century. And Dave Meltzer, and I quote, the two combined pulling out their expected daredevil and intricate precision high spots with strong mat wrestling and more selling and psychology than they would in Mexico, Japan, or ECW. I rate this match behind only the Mysterio Jr. versus Juventud Guerrero match in Philly as the best match in the U.S. of 1996. High praise. The first great match of the 21st century. It lived up to the billing. I enjoyed it. But what were your thoughts on this match? And at least hearing from what Meltzer's perspective of what he thought about it.
Yeah, the match was phenomenal. I like, as a fan of wrestling now, 2022, this match holds up, if not steals the whole fucking show for the last year. I think it was so well done. Psychosis is fantastic. Rey Mysterio, obviously legend in the making, but really putting out their best work here. I don't think we've ever seen a match more comparable in this timeline. I mean, you could claim Lucha Brothers versus Bucks, you could claim this and that, but these guys were not only the innovators of it, but they also still carry that. Psychosis not so much, but Rey Mysterio is still out there doing his thing with his kid, and like it's wild as fuck. And I think Meltzer's on the money, man.
So, I mean, I agree with this. And the only reason I pulled this from the newsletter is because when you think of Bash to the Beach, you think of that moment. And of course, wrestling's about moments, but the wrestling that happened on this card, it can't be forgotten. I think if people go back and watch this whole event, you should watch it in full. At least watch that Rey Mysterio and Psychosis match because it's well worth tuning into, as is a lot of the wrestling we see in the cruiserweight division. Because I'll say time and time again, I think the cruiserweights are what kept people there. Once you drew them in with the stars and the storylines and all the chaos that the NWO was, people were drawn to the wrestling that I have never seen before. And of course, in Mexico and Japan, also ECW, it was happening on a nightly basis. But for the casual fan, this is the first time they're ever seeing this type of wrestling. And for me, I remember Rey Mysterio blowing my mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like even like just being a kid, I remember falling in love with the way he would float around the ring and just do what he did. And it was like watching live art, and you don't get to see that too often with anything, let alone movies or sports or anything. So it was like, it was watching like Van Gogh paint a painting in front of you. It was fucking art happening in front of your eyes. And he did it so well. It was ridiculous, man.
So we had mentioned UFC all throughout, and obviously UFC is a powerhouse in all of sports now. Think about the ESPN Plus deal they have, how lucrative they've become. Time and place in 1996, they were still trying to get their foothold in not only combat sports, but sports in general, because they were looked upon as, I guess, as outlaw mud show as anything else you could put out there. And I thought this was interesting in the newsletter because it just shows you how much can change in 25 years. After controversy with local government officials in every city UFC attempted to run shows in, including some shows that were in question up until the day before or even hours before the show, UFC suffered a clear loss this past week when it lost a court fight in Providence, Rhode Island, and was forced to move its 7/12 pay-per-view to the State Fairgrounds Arena in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'll continue that in a second, but just to show how far UFC has grown into, again, socially acceptable when you have, you know, all these different advertisers taking out spots on the mat that is eventually covered in blood, undoubtedly. You have people breaking legs and arms over the top of these advertisements. How much has really changed? What do you attribute that to? Is it us becoming older because we're, I guess, a little bit more immune to seeing that stuff and because we grew up in a certain generation? Or do you think UFC sort of pushed the way in and piggybacked on Vince making WWF and WWE socially acceptable?
I feel like the success of UFC came when the Attitude Era started fizzing out. A lot of people are looking for that realism, albeit, you know, there's not a lot of realism going on with a lot of these angles and Attitude Era shit, like Val Venuses and stuff. But they took what worked and made it their own thing on top of what wrestling is. They didn't really get big until like the later run of the 2010 area. You know, it was like 2005, 2006, you know, going on. I think we all kind of grew up and wrestling kind of went backwards a little bit, especially with the Ruthless Aggression stuff. And then it kind of fell out, became that PG product. And UFC was kind of like, oh, this is the real shit. Like, we want to see the real shit. That's why we watched what we watched. And I think they kind of capitalized that. And like, what's the reality show, Ultimate Fighter? Ultimate Fighter was a big part of that because you got a worked look behind the scenes. So these guys punching through doors, all pissed off at their kids that they're training and shit. Like, you're like, what the fuck's going to happen next? You know, it was their way of kind of taking the ball from the Attitude Era of fan base and keeping them and kind of moving on into their own sport, if that makes any fucking sense.
No, it does for sure. And I think if you follow the lineage of it, I think wrestling picked up where boxing dropped the ball, and then where wrestling dropped the ball after the Attitude Era boom, something had to pick it up.
Yeah.
The UFC exploded, and who knows what's after UFC. And if anything gets bigger than where UFC is now, we're in for a treat because I mean,
it's all BattleBot.
BattleBot's live after Dynamite.
Fucking here for it.
But I mean, it's so crazy to see where UFC's become as this socially acceptable. People gather in, like, you know, they order food in and watch the pay-per-view, where that was looked at as this like underground fight club that was a no-no as far as not only just advertisers. It's just so commonplace now. And I can't place why it's so acceptable. Maybe because we were once kids and our parents couldn't wrap their heads around it. But now that we're older, we've just seen it and grown up with it, that we're desensitized to the violence of it. I'm not sure what it is.
Well, you know, I mentioned it on a previous show. My mom was like, "Oh, you can watch ECW, but you are not fucking ordering UFC in this house." Not knowing, she did not watch an episode of ECW, but it was just that, like, the name UFC was barbaric at the time.
Yeah.
You say you're watching wrestling, you know, even though you got Terry Funk and Sabu fucking killing each other in a barbed wire death match, that it's not the same as, oh, you know, so and so rips his guy's fucking throat out while he's beating the shit out of so I just think as time evolved, everybody's taste evolved. We got adult money. We wanted to support something more real. We love tailgating. We love fucking barbaric real sports. That's why football's still a thing. And I think that's what kind of like we all grew into it. And we were like, oh, fuck, you know, the fake shit. Let's watch the real guys fight, which, you know, little to our knowns that they are working us too. It's just the same as wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing. I mean, this was pretty recent history too. I mean, 1996, but also I still remember the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. Over here, they had a hard time, and MSG just recently started running UFC. It's not that far long ago that it wasn't allowed to be in arenas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they just started running the Allstate Arena here, which was the Rosemont Horizon. Goddamn kid, biggest pop in the goddamn business. But
that wood roof, baby,
that wood roof, man. But I mean, when they started it, they were still struggling to sell that place out. It wasn't something everybody flocks to, but they establish their own business plan and they know what they're doing. And they are that like Vegas show. You go to Vegas, you want to see a UFC fight. You know, it did replace boxing very much so. There's no more boxing at MGM Grand. It's fucking UFC at MGM Grand.
Yeah, boxing at this point is just celebrity boxing. Like, let's have a UFC fighter box a YouTube star. That's like their biggest gate, and that says everything you need to know about boxing. But to continue that conversation about UFC, so the state of Rhode Island got a court injunction last week preventing the show from taking place. The promoters, who you don't need to know the name of, they went to the Superior Court Judge Richard Israel had previously ruled that UFC would have to abide by the guidelines of pro wrestling and get a license from the Department of Business Regulations to run its show to overturn the injunction. Israel refused to reject the injunction, saying that his hands were tied because all the appeals weren't exhausted prior to the case going back. So the fact that UFC would have to abide by a wrestling regulation, that seems impossible. And that, I guess that was the point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You could hear, if you go back and watch Al, like the long form Jim Cornette podcast, he'll talk about how the athletic commissions were nothing but a bunch of dickheads, always trying to fuck over the business and make a lot of money doing it. So UFC would have been really fucked if, you know, that was the case going on forward for the rest of time. I don't think there would be UFC, but those athletic commissions, man, they will rob you for every penny.
And they still exist too. I know, and I mentioned this a week or so ago, where in AEW they ran, I forget what building, but they were not allowed to bleed, categorically not allowed to bleed at all, because they would shut the whole show down. And there's some cities that still abide by all these rules that were set in place in 1965, and they haven't even updated it.
Hammerstein Ballroom, when GCW went there, they had to have floor mats. They had to have barricades. They couldn't do what GCW does. It hinders the product, you know? So it takes away from the vibe that one company runs with. I mean, even AEW, like you said, there's some places that won't let CM Punk stage dive because it's not in code with what they fucking run. It's just stupid.
Well, maybe he wouldn't have broke his foot if he was in Birmingham, Alabama. I know, let's just say Rhode Island, I guess, because Birmingham, Alabama is running UFC in 1996, so they're cool. So just to kind of tie the bow on Jim Helwig, in the 15th newsletter, they talked about how he was officially suspended by WWF due to missing shows the previous weekend. And just to kind of talk about what they did in replacement, and people may remember this or they may not, The suspension, which was announced that evening on the Raw show, was effective immediately, and Psycho Sid took on all bookings for his place. So they just literally plucked him out and placed Psycho Sid into Ultimate Warrior storylines. Do you remember that happening, watching WWF at the time?
I remember Sid's presence just being overwhelmingly there out of nowhere. Even to this day, it mind boggles me. And I've met Sid a few times, but like it really does. It fucks with me. Like, I don't know. He had no place being the WWF champ. You know, it was one of those things. He was forced into his spot, maybe prematurely, maybe not prematurely. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, we're live, pal. We've seen how Sid has been. So it's weird that they picked such a lackluster person. Sorry, Sid Vicious. I love you, but to carry the company, man.
Yeah. So they mentioned on TV, which is probably the first time in a long time they ever addressed real life situations on TV, and which would be the start of a long lineage of doing it. And a year later, obviously, the Mr. McMahon character grew out of a storyline that wasn't a storyline. But Gorilla Monsoon stated that Warrior would be welcome back, provided he posts an appearance bond, which was a shoot, which is the excess of $100,000. Talent was said to be very upset with them bringing back Warrior unpunished because he was being treated in a more favorable way than anybody else would. And if Helwig were to appear to post the bond, he would probably be written back into storylines and return to the WWF, which originally didn't happen. So the original plan provided that Helwig would miss the pay-per-view to announce him as an injured after the already taped angle involving Hart, Smith, and Vader was nixed, apparently because too many people were aware of Helwig's actual situation. So they're sort of forced by reality and the emergence of the dirt sheets to hold them accountable and have a conversation with the fans and treat them as knowledgeable individuals that know what's going on.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I mean, but that just shows you how much merch money talks. Because Ultimate Warrior was the merch guy, and second to Hogan, maybe first at some point. Who would have known? But yeah, man, it's fucking crazy that they were just be like, oh, just pay us $100,000. Everything's gonna be good. It's hush money. Vince loves hush money.
Very timely. And the word that keeps appearing about Warrior is bitterness. And you mentioned he was a little bit unhinged, but the word bitterness keeps coming up in Meltzer's language. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And bitterness with himself and bitterness from other people. And this is what he said. There was tremendous bitterness within WWF regarding Helwig's no-shows. Reportedly, he was in Indy on the 28th, had a telephone blow up with McMahon regarding something he saw at a licensing show a few days earlier. WWF sources claim that at no point did Helwig complain about his WrestleMania payoff in the argument, but he blew up because he saw a slogan of always believe being used at a WWF marketing slogan. He felt that was his personal slogan that he had already used for years, and that WWF hadn't paid him for the use of the slogan, and felt the items with the slogan should have been his items, and he should have been informed of them and received a cut of them. Thoughts on that? Because that's sort of ahead of his time. Now we have wrestlers that Pro Wrestling Tees, they have their own show, their own shirts, and they actually go to indie shows and they own their likeness. Warrior was a little bit ahead of his game, and he didn't go about it the correct way. But I think so. Part of his message there was very in tune with what we're seeing with Sasha and Naomi, and going to make sure that the business isn't like squeezing you dry and not getting your cut of it.
Yeah, I mean, imagine being John Cena and you go to take a movie role and WWE is making WWE shirts that say never give up. You know what I mean? Like, would you get rubbed the wrong way? I would feel a little rubbed the wrong way, but yeah, I mean, Warrior's a little crazy, but he knew contractually the right stuff to do, even if he handled it the wrong way. So maybe he should have been the guy that got the merchandising residuals for coming up with Always Believe. But I mean, that's like, hey, Mark Henry said, get the F out. So we're not WWF anymore. We're WWE. So we're going to steal that from, you know, it doesn't matter. It's all hearsay at that point.
So similar to the MJF situation, again, history does repeat itself. If you look closely in the tea leaves, you can find things that do happen again. Jim Helwig appeared on a interview with Bob Ryder on Prodigy Radio on 7/1, and he had reported he's not having any problems with WWF. There was a bitterness, I use the word bitterness again, that he appeared as a WWF wrestler on an unauthorized interview, and he's banned from doing so. He gave an on-the-record interview on Prodigy, a competitor to AOL, which WWF has its contract with. So we didn't have advertisers get involved in the MJF situation, but Tony Khan was, whether it's a shoot or a work at that point when he was upset when he was on Ariel Helwani's show. I mean, companies have to abide, especially when you have sponsors and advertisements tied into it. Prodigy, which is a direct competitor of AOL's hot. Warrior's just trying to get his mind out there and talk about how he's feeling, not understand the ramifications. I can't blame McMahon for being upset here.
No, not at all. Bitterness, the star is a good term because the star was always bitter. But I mean, come on, the guy's just trying to talk, do his shit, doing a shoot interview, if you will, before the shoot interviews were a really big thing. And I mean, listen, if I was Vince McMahon, I'd be fucking outraged.
Yeah. So enough about Warrior, and I'm sure he'll pop up again in the newsletter, and I will mention it because it's always fascinating to build the context. That's the goal here. I know he's not part of WCW, but he could have been, and that's what we like to do here, fantasy book.
Hell yeah.
So we mentioned Hog Wild. So the WCW show will be a free outdoor show on 8/10 from Sturgis, South Dakota, and as we know, mentioned before, it's called Hog Wild. Some of the matches were being announced. So Giant versus Hogan for the WCW title, Sting and Luger versus Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, Flair defending the U.S. title against Eddie, Harlem Heat versus the Steiners, Rey Mysterio defending his title against Ultimo Dragon or Liger, Chris Benoit versus Kevin Sullivan in a gimmick match. It's going to be a real test for WCW according to Meltzer because it's a free outdoor pay-per-view. The last one they did was 1995 Bash at the Beach from Huntington Beach, California, and it was a complete and utter disaster live and among the worst pay-per-view shows in history. And it will be, again, tough, he mentions, because it's a non-wrestling crowd. And that's pretty much, I guess, in tune to these Nitros. And, of course, we'll get there eventually. We'll talk about them. Performing in front of a fan base or a live crowd that's not really familiar with your product, it's challenging. And WCW did that a lot in the 90s.
No, absolutely. And we've seen it further on in TNA, AEW now, they're in that Universal Studio space. It's a hard sell, but I feel like a lot, like even watching these Nitros, a lot of fans showed up. I mean, there was a lot of people in Horsemen shirts. There were wrestling fans there. There just weren't the full capacity buying a ticket to watch a wrestling show. So I think it was rather you're thrown off by, oh wow, WCW's at MGM, this is crazy. Like let's go to it. You know, it'll be a great thing for the family. And like kids play a big part. Kids get tired quick. I haven't taken my kids to a show yet because they're like, I'm not staying up for fucking 4 hours watching wrestling. And like the attention span thing is a big deal for it. So yeah, crazy, man.
So we did mention, you kind of alluded to it. Meltzer did mention the exact thing you said. He said the first hour of Nitro was good, but the crowd energy really died in the second hour. Since the crowd is outdoors, he can get humid, and much of the crowd aren't wrestling fans. They went off to do other things in the MGM or Disney parks, and their attention span is limited, and it showed during the second hour. Hogan eventually appears on the July 15th show that we'll talk about in depth. Obviously, this was all freebies. No one paid for a ticket. 600 people there. Cool aesthetic at MGM Grand Studios, but I mean, you run yourself into a hole when you're again performing in front of fans that aren't already WCW fans, especially the biggest follow-up to the biggest angle you've ever done.
Yeah,
and we will talk about why that happens, but it's just a challenging thing, a bad situation, maybe some bad luck, but they made the best of it.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, Muppets 4D was on the same fucking lot. You had a lot of competition there. So if I brought my kids to Disney and they were doing wrestling, my kids would be pissed that we stayed and watched wrestling. And it would be like, oh, Dad could stay here for 5 minutes, but let's get the fuck out of here because we got to go on ET. Like, fuck off.
So there's a dude in the newsletter, and I don't usually go and find their anecdotal things, but this talked about he was live at the show. And if I can find Joey Sprinkle, if you're watching out here, Joey Sprinkle, 1996 WCW fan who you attended many WCW tapings allegedly. And I thought his take was good because it's almost like having him here on the show. And he said, I've attended many Disney tapings over the past 2 years. Admittedly, the set looks good on TV and WCW loves going there due to the state of the art equipment, the red carpet treatment from Disney, in the ongoing negotiations concerning a long-term Disney relationship. As has been reported, the vast majorities of attendees of Disney tapings aren't wrestling fans. The crowd mainly consists of Disney park visitors looking for a quick respite from the heat. As for the crowd on the July 8th Nitro, I'd be willing to bet that less than 10% of them attended, saw, or were even aware of what happened at the previous night's pay-per-view. I'm not even sure if the front row that was on camera knew they were at a pro wrestling taping or that they were at Indiana Jones stunt exhibit across the street. Additionally, the lackadaisical exiting of the crowd directly behind Nash and Hall being interviewed by Gene Okerlund at the end of the show looked really bad. I attended the show in Daytona Beach. The heat, the anger, and emotion from the crowd at the end was unlike anything I've seen in more than 20 years of going to wrestling matches. One of the guys I was with commented that was reminiscent of the near riot mentality of the 1970s crowd in the Midwest when Ernie Ladd turned heel. WCW's brass needs to realize that real, non-manufactured emotion must be captured on the company's #1 television show in order to give credibility to their angles. The Disney setting is fine for shows such as WCW Pro and Worldwide, which usually features non-competitive matches, but for Nitro, Saturday night clashes, and pay-per-view shows, it's all wrong. So
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to read the whole thing because he sums it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's not wrong either. Like it's like I said, it's a hard sell. But I mean, the aesthetic looked great on TV. The crowd was hot. The crowd was packed. Uh, the setup was a little fucking weird. Like even when they were showing the limo and all the Disney workers like kind of shooing everybody away from the limo, and it was just it was awkward. Would be the best term to put it. But I think they did a good job with what they had, and it wasn't completely terrible.
No, I agree. And I think it aged pretty well. And I love, for me, nostalgia wise, I love watching those Nitros being filmed by the pool and these outdoor Nitros. And again, this was the first Nitro that ever was filmed outdoors, and it was by accident because they had to. And do you remember why? Do you remember what we were talking about this week that was happening in 1996?
Fuck, there was some kind of sporting thing mucking it up, wasn't there?
Exactly. So Atlanta was the host in 1996 of the Olympics, and Turner was covering all of it. So WCW went directly to the back burner. And this is, again, Meltzer from the newsletter. He had said, I don't like the look of the TV show at Disney because you feel like you're watching Little League Baseball or adult softball in these makeshift grandstands. And there isn't much of a choice since all of the Turner trucks, every last one of them, are covering the Olympics. It was a better show than most for the 2 hours, but they probably would have asked to have their live show in front of a heat-driven crowd that would care about what was happening.
Yeah, 100%. But also, I disagree with it being like a little league show. I thought it looked really nice, very presentable, and also it's like kind of like a time capsule for history because it's not Disney MGM anymore. It's Disney Hollywood Studios. You don't get the same vibe. Like when I was watching, I mean, my parents took me to Disney when I was a kid. I was at MGM when I was a kid. I remember that park very well, and a lot of that aesthetic. I was like, "Oh fuck yeah, this is awesome." So maybe for the 2022 aesthetic, it makes for a better show than it did in '96.
Completely agree, and I think I believe it actually added to the aesthetic of Nitro. It felt like a special event, and I know the crowd didn't react as strongly to the characters as you probably would have wanted them to, especially coming off Batch of the Beach with the organic heat that was created for the Hogan turn, but they made the best of it. And obviously it worked out because they just caught fire, and this was sort of a bump in the road. It could have been much worse. The fact that Turner wasn't there, they could have just taken 2 weeks off of taping. That would have been catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do see that the heat does eventually continue to follow the NWO and Hogan, and people still throwing shit in the ring eventually, come a few episodes down the road. So it really didn't take the foot off the gas at all. It was just kind of like, oh, it's a speed check coming up. We got to slow down a little bit, get through it so we don't get fucked over, and then then we can pedal to the metal.
So the last thing in the newsletter here, and I want to mention because we've been hyping it up since Forbidden Door was being, I guess, built up in AEW, WCW, New Japan Pro Wrestling. It wasn't just them sending over Alex Wright. They sent over some big stars, and the guys that were there for the 2 nights in Sapporo on July 16th threw a sellout, 6,400 fans with Ric Flair, Randy Savage, Sting, and the Giant from WCW on the card. Giant defended the WCW title, pinning Sasaki under the gimmick Power Warrior. He beat him in 4 minutes and 53 seconds, so more of the same, but the fans were super into it. They loved the Giant and what he brought to the table. The Road Warriors were there as well. Just a cool card. See, and it's cool to see that they actually were not one, not two, but 4 really big stars. This was an act of kindness that Eric Bischoff was like, you know what? In the midst of us having all this taping going on, here you go. Have our guys.
Yeah. No, listen, it's cool. I love, I'm all a cross-platform guy. I love seeing the PlayStation 5 people playing with the Xbox 360 people. I love seeing it all. So, I mean, it makes for good business. And I think it is good business. And it's cool just to get your American stars to mingle with those New Japan guys. It makes for fucking perfect business plans. I don't know. You're establishing your company more so and internationally. You know, it's like us bringing in Nick Storm. Like we get international
100%.
play because we got Nick Storm here. You know, it's easy flowing. So fuck yeah, I'm here for WCW.
You guys will get your fix of Nick Storm in an hour and 15 minutes. He'll be here on Before Our Time covering WrestleMania 4, and he gave me some thoughts as he was watching it live. So you guys do not want to miss young Anthony Nick Storm cover the one-night tournament for the WWF Championship from Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Such a great WrestleMania. Ooh. I love it. And this is the first time they both watched it. So awesome.
Crazy.
All right. So you ready to get your fix?
Oh,
Talk
yeah,
about the Nitros. Yeah. I mean, we got some drinks to have. We got some DQ finishes or no contest countouts. Some good stuff to talk about.
Fuck yeah.
All right, it's time to get our fix. We have WCW Monday Nitro from July 8th, 1996, from Orlando, Florida, as we mentioned, the Disney MGM Studios. Was it not MGM Grand? That's MGM Grand is was Vegas,
MGM Grand's
right?
Vegas. Yeah, MGM Studios was like it was just like the Hollywood themed aspect.
Right, it's where like the test track ride is, right?
Yeah, Ninja Turtles was there. Now that's where Star Wars is. That's where all the cool shit is.
They used to have the Hollywood backlot, the boat ride where like the guy would take over your boat and like, you know, all that stuff.
Absolutely, man. You got it was probably my favorite Disney park at the time. In 96, it was fucking popping. Nickelodeon Studios was there. Or wait, no, that was Universal.
Now? It's Hollywood Studios?
Now it's Disney Hollywood Studios or Disney Hollywood Land, whatever the fuck they want to call it.
Pixar is now, where like Toy Story ride is.
Pixar, Star Wars, Tower of Terror, all that kind of shit. You know, it's in that space. So it was a really nice park. It's smooth to get through, fun shit. I took my kids there. 6 years ago. We had a blast. It was fun. They were just building Star Wars. They were just building an addition to the Pixar thing. Super cool little space. I remember going there as a kid, loved it. They had Muppets, they had Turtles, like I said.
I remember the Muppets one.
Yeah, the Muppets one's great. And which is still there. Tested time to show you how good the fucking Muppets are. Muppets 4D adventure, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
They had that thing where they, if I remember, the 3D glasses and they throw the pies at you and you could smell the blueberry pies like in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, you get water on your face and like they had these things underneath the seats that would hit you like snakes. And it was a cool little fucking thing to do.
This is why you can't run Nitro. That is too much to do. You got the turkey leg walking around the park and you got the food. You got the pineapple, Dole Whip, ice cream. How can you sit and watch a wrestling show in 95 degrees when all that is there?
100%. That's why I said my kids would have been like, let's get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you watching these guys fucking walk around in underwear for?
Well, so 600 people and decreasing were live from, well, not live, it was taped here, but it was live at one point. Disney MGM Studios, and our current champs, the Giant is our world champion. As we mentioned, he was able to successfully defend his title in Japan. Our U.S. champion is Ric Flair. He won it back on July 7th. The WCW World Tag Team Champions are Harlem Heat. They won it back on June 24th. The TV champion is still somehow Lex Luger, and the Cruiserweight champion is Dean Malenko, but not for long, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, listen, pal.
All right, so the first Nitro to be taped outdoors. I was expecting a swimming pool. I didn't get a swimming pool. When was the year that we get the swimming pool? Is that not till 97, or did we get it? I think
that might be 96, 97. We'll have to do like a special. And just cover that Nitro, because that was one of my favorite Nitros ever.
Some cool memories too, and I love like the Jericho Cruise Dynamites had the same exact appeal that had. It felt very Nitro-y, and we say it all the time. Tony Khan is clearly a WCW kid growing up, because the booking, the trios titles, the Dynamite Diamond Ring, the way he presents things, the commercials in the middle of matches, keep going down the line. Forbidden Door. Yeah. He's cut from Eric Bischoff. And it's funny, Eric Bischoff hates him, you know, and he loved Eric Bischoff growing up. Little 10-year-old Tony Khan loved Eric Bischoff.
He tried to get him involved, man.
Eric Bischoff, I think he's just bitter he's not involved, but that's a different story from another time.
Well, yeah.
All right, so hour number 1, we have Tony Schiavone, Larry Zbyszko. Tony Schiavone's having a hard time getting through the intro. I'm not sure if he's selling this because of how upset he is at Hogan. They mentioned that he was the evil third man at Bash the Beach, and they show still shots of what happened. The old school still shots to sell up the pay-per-view. Enough to get you to want to buy the replay, I think. They're still making money on Tuesday replays, right, Mike Belcaster?
Yeah, they even threw out an ad for it for the 2 different TV providers at the time. You were able to watch it that Tuesday and that Thursday. They were ready to roll.
All right, so we're ready to roll as well. Let's go with the opening match, and I'll let you take the lead here. This is for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship, Rey Mysterio versus Dean Malenko.
Yeah, you thought it was hot and humid in Florida. My goodness, was this match bringing that heat. This was the greatest shit you could possibly watch. I mean, you're talking about 2 of the best of all time to step in the ring when they were just kind of on that skirt of becoming the best. Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio, great fucking back and forth, good match. Mysterio's gears popping. He's got that hot pink going on. Dean Malenko's Dean fucking Malenko. You can't really have a bad time. This was a absolute banger. I highly recommend that everybody goes back and watch this. Whether you're in full blown with us here or you're just picking the cherry tree, this is a very ripe, beautiful cherry. It wasn't super long. It was 9 minutes 47 seconds. Great fucking match, man. You wrote down a 3.5, or I'm giving it a full 4. I thought it was fucking great.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Maybe my bar is so raised because of the Psychosis match. I think if you give this match another 5 minutes, I think it could be an all-time great match. But for a Nitro opening match, I mean, some of the spots here, the super gut buster that Malenko hit him, and then belly-to-belly throw, Malenko lifts Mysterio off the mat again. He goes for the tilt-a-whirl, but Mysterio counters into the West Coast pop, which, it wasn't called the West Coast pop here, and he gets the 3. But some of the other spots, the arm drags, just the head scissors, and both guys are they're so in tune. It's like they're locked up. Do you remember the old magnet WCW figures? That's what they felt like they were.
Oh, hell yeah. The
flipping
grips
attached the whole time.
I think I still have a few flipping grips in my
Dean Malenko came with Chris Jericho at the point, right?
It was great, yeah.
Yeah. So new champion here. Thoughts on Rey Mysterio getting the title? I feel like Dean Malenko just got the title, but to me, Rey Mysterio is, you need the title on Rey Mysterio. He right now is a rising star aside from NWO. People are here to see Rey.
Yeah, listen, on our AEW wrap-up show, on any show that we're, talking about wrestling, a lot of people say the hot potato title changes kind of suck. This is a proving point that it does not. Rey Mysterio kind of earned it. He came out, that match with Psychosis the last show was fucking unbelievable. This was no different. It was super good. So I think Rey kind of earned that spot to kind of win this match in a good way, too. I really think that there's not a better opponent for a cruiserweight champion than Dean Malenko, and I think this was one of those things where it was a hot spot. Give the guy the fucking belt, see what happens. Worst case scenario, you take it back off of him in a few weeks, and Dean Malenko comes back, and the Iceman cometh and returns and puts him in one of his 1,000 holds and makes shit go down. So I take the chance. What's gonna hurt somebody? Rey Mysterio obviously turned out to be fucking Rey Mysterio. So it's a good call, I think.
Yeah, according to the internet insiders at the time and on some dirt sheets, they were originally deciding to have Rey job to Malenko here, and they were going to have Rey and Eddie teaming to take on Psychosis and Dean at Hog Wild. Then they changed their mind because of the reception that Rey was getting and how well received he was in the ring. They made a decision on the fly, which we asked Dynamite, AEW, Raw and SmackDown with WWE to do that and make a decision. I go back and I probably sound like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. Riddle was ready to win that championship that night on SmackDown. Yeah. Because it wasn't planned. They didn't expect the reaction. They didn't expect the popping, the rating. They continued to have him job to almost the night on Raw. Like, have some foresight and say, you know what? We didn't expect that, but we're going to go in a certain direction. Imagine if they decide not to go in the direction of Rey. Maybe you don't have the superstar, the Hall of Fame wrestler that you have now.
Yeah, no, like I've said it before, wrestling right now is like a train track and not a highway. There's different lanes you could choose. There's plenty of ways to get over. Depends on who you're working. That's an old Scott Hall joke, but yeah, it's just it is what it is. Like they don't take those kind of chances as often as they should, especially when the crowd is lightning hot behind it. So it's a downfall. I think that's one of the biggest downfalls of modern day wrestling.
And this is a great Nitro moment when you see highlights of Nitro. It's the outdoors. It's still sort of light out. You see the sun coming in as it's peeking behind the trees where when Malenko's getting pinned. It's historic. It's like it's just as famous, second famous Rey gear to the purple at Halloween Havoc. This pink gear is synonymous with Rey Mysterio and a big moment. It's his first championship in North America. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely huge deal. And like you said, the aesthetics of being outdoors, the sun setting, it's still bright out, but not super bright out. It's just starting to get dark. It really adds an extra flavor to the madness going on.
Oh, yeah. And you mentioned some madness. We have Gene Okerlund backstage with the Steiners and the Nasty Boys. They're arguing. They don't get along. They're building towards the match. Who really cares? But, more Gene Okerlund stuff in the back.
The best line is Scott Steiner sitting there shitting on the Nasty Boys. He goes, "But I respect your wrestling ability." Exactly. I was like, "What the fuck is he
Said
smoking?"
No one ever.
Yeah.
All right, so we got another Glacier promo here, and they're saying it's Glacier now. It says Glacier. It doesn't say just Blood Runs Cold. It just says Glacier underneath, and it will be until September. We don't get Ray Lloyd until September. What's the holdup here? I know that there was stuff in the newsletter last week about his suit not looking up to his liking at a comic book. I think they brought him to a comic book shop or something to, I guess, show people the outfit, and people were like kind of making fun of it.
Yeah.
Do you remember that story happening at all?
I don't remember that story happening. I don't know why they're waiting so long. I think Florida in this humid, hot weather would have been a perfect time to debut this ice cold character named Glacier.
Have the Sting entrance with the snow, like all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. People would have popped. They would have been like, "Oh, hopefully it's cold." If they would have blew some cold air towards everybody and while the snow was coming down, that character would have got so fucking over.
Like they have in the parks where they have like all the cold air being blown. It's Glacier. Yes. He just walks around one of those ice fans. I like this guy.
Exactly.
All right, our next match here, we have the Blue Bloods coming out with Robert, Eden, and Jeeves, and they defeated Hugh Morris and Big Bubba in a pretty short match. So they've been feuding on WCW Pro, which is a show we don't review. If you want to really go the in-deep shot nostalgia, go watch WCW Pro and Saturday Night. Maybe Tom can get it on some level server where he's been finding some awesome wrestling. So Morris comes in, mocks the Blue Bloods for a bit. This match goes quick. The double back suplex from the Blue Bloods lands on Morris. 1, 2, 3 minutes and 1 second. We're still getting more Tenta Bubba tension coming up. What can we just end it, please?
Yeah, put it down, man. Grow up, man.
All right, so we have another commercial for WCW Saturday Night, which I always like to put in my notes here, and I just think it's really funny. Yeah. One of these days, maybe we'll review a Saturday Night. We're not inundated with all this information, but until then, take the lead on Eddie Guerrero versus Psychosis here.
Man, again, not much you can say. This is a fantastic cruiserweight match. We went 8 minutes, 35 seconds. You're talking very, very great back and forth between Eddie and Psychosis. Again, how do you pair up these guys and make a shit show? You can't. If the first half hour or first hour of Nitro was cruiserweights, I think the ratings would be off the fucking hook. I mean, you're getting really solid pro wrestling. Eddie looks fantastic, picks up the win here against Psychosis. Again, a fucking super good match. And that frog splash does not lie. It always puts him down, man.
Yeah, this was Psychosis' debut on Nitro for the first time here. And it's the first time we've seen him. And he becomes a staple throughout the years. And he's one of those guys, very toyetic. I'm not sure how many great Psychosis toys are out there. I mean, can you tell me?
I don't think they made any. I'm pretty sure
there's a AAA figure out there. If I remember seeing one of them out there, because I know that maybe
original San Francisco toy makers might have made a Psychosis, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I don't even think he's been made in like a classics line or a legends line. Somebody fucking get Psychosis's IP so we can get some Psychosis toys. Dude's a legend.
After we're done here, I'm going to definitely look up some Psychosis figures because I think he's so toyetic because of the hair and the mask and the outfit. You could change the colors. You have variants that he used to wear. Really, really cool. This match, as you mentioned, was really good. It didn't go long, but again, it was one of those things that the cruiserweights continued to just impress on a weekly basis. And these two guys are absolute legends. Eddie Guerrero, I mean, he's so ahead of his time. He's so polished. And who would have thought that him and both Rey eventually would be ending WrestleManias all those years later as world champions, 2 different WrestleManias, Rey at 22, Eddie Guerrero at 20, retaining against Kurt Angle. It just shows you when you put some stock in these guys as cruiserweights, it can help build your roster and help make it well-rounded, because it can't just be about Rick and Scott Steiner and the Nasty Boys. It can't just be about Hogan, Nash, and Hall. You need some of that high-flying stuff to pace it. And we need a plethora of wrestling to build the buffet. We talk about it. It's a buffet. You want to have something for everybody. And I think the cruiserweights, everybody can agree. It goes down smooth. You want to talk about, and as far as drinks go, it's the very tasty drink that's like, wow, that didn't even taste like it had alcohol in it. That was amazing.
Yeah, but it also adds the legitimacy to the business. You get to see these really high profile matches early on. So even if you have a John Tenta wrestling later on, it doesn't take away from the whole show. You're going, oh, this is fucking the drizzling shits. It's fake, blah, blah. Like, it was still good. And just an update, Psychosis only had a figure by Jack's Pacific without the fucking mask.
Why?
They
had the Mexicool figure.
Yeah, so not what you were expecting. He did have a AAA figure, had real hair and shit like that, but nothing compared to, like, how do you miss that boat being the guys that make classic superstars, and you don't make a Psychosis with a mask in WCW? You're high.
Yeah, I think we need that.
We do.
So the ending, just to kind of give you guys the idea how it ended, and go back and check it out. Eddie put Psychosis on his shoulders for a super electric chair drop. Psychosis counters into a sunset powerbomb, really close near fall. And it's weird because Psychosis' debut here, I thought maybe by chance he might have beat Eddie, but no, Eddie brings him down with a superplex, sets up the frog splash, and gets to 3. I love both these guys. They're both legends of the game. Eddie Guerrero, again, the rightful guy getting the win here, because they're building him up to wrestle Flair down the line at Hog Wild, so he need to win. But no harm, no foul getting Psychosis in there and losing in his debut. You don't feel like he's any worse for the wear.
No, and he had time to prove himself. I mean, 8 minutes for TV debut is a pretty good job.
All right, so before we move on to the next match here, we have Gene Okerlund with the WCW World Champion, the Giant, and he's with Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart. They bring up Hogan. They're trying to get everyone's perspective on what's going on with Hogan. Jimmy Hart had no comments, and Sullivan actually highlights this interview by making sense. He says Hogan took away from him what he had spent the last 18 months trying to do by destroying Hulkamania himself. So they're tying it in that it makes more sense. And Kevin Sullivan doesn't quite say he likes Hogan now, but I guess he kind of respects the fact that he destroyed Hulkamania. And again, Kevin Sullivan, who really cares? This was done at the top of the ramp. Right. And,
talk about Kevin Sullivan saying he making sense for once, and then goes and makes no fucking sense again. Go Kevin Sullivan, man.
I do like that he brought up the fact that he was trying to destroy Hulkamania instead of just being like, he's a heel, now I like him. I do appreciate that he spent, over a year, and they had the Doomsday Cage involved, and they tried to kill Hulkamania, and then Hulkamania destroys itself, and we'll see it again. It rises from the ashes, but Kevin Sullivan kind of, I don't know, give him his credit when it's due.
Yeah. Sweetly.
All right. Next match, we have the Nasty Boys taking on Rick and Scott Steiner. Tell me how this one goes, Mike.
Listen, Scott Steiner said it best. He really respects the wrestling ability of the Nasty Boys. This is, if the Steiners weren't in this would be, I wouldn't even tell you to watch this match. Obviously the Steiners hold up very well. Great shit. 6-minute match. Scott gets the cover for the win. I cannot stand the Nasty Boys. They were our one tag team that had the most go away heat with me, that I never understood it. I know they're buddies with Hogan. I fucking hate the Nasty Boys.
I mean, I can't argue with it. They are just there. Every time they're there, it's forgettable. And even the Steiners couldn't make them look really good. So no,
their jackets, they're everything. I mean, they had a decent look, but I'm just not digging it. It wasn't a terrible match, but it's something I would say if you're pressed on time, this is your first fast forward of the shot of nostalgia.
Agreed. And I mean, we can go into details about just the Nasty Boys' intentions, but who really cares about it? Because it doesn't really have any long-term effects. And we know that the Nasty Boys they're floating around this tag division for a bit, and they add depth to it. So I guess that's their value. But the right booking decision was made. The Steiners got the win here.
Absolutely. And God bless us, it's our number 2.
So with our number 2, we change our announce team. And again, this is the other thing we talk about with Tony. He changes the announce team. Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan, which I believe is the better version of the announce team. I do love Tony Schiavone, but Heenan, whenever you get him on the mic, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We got fireworks too, which I think this is the first time we saw any pyro.
Yeah. Beautiful fireworks though. It looked really nice for this Nitro. They usually do top of the hour pyro. So I mean, this was cool for the outdoor aesthetics with the fireworks and shit. I thought it worked really fucking good, and it looked great. A lot of fun visuals going on here. You got the entrance of MGM Disney set up with those very glittery WCW letters on top of it, which was really cool. I thought
cool.
the way they set this is important. This is a lot of like the way they set the fans up at ringside. There's no barricades, which added some kind of value to it, a lot of flavor, but the seating looked awesome. I thought they did a really good job of the seating. The entrance looked like shit because it was all the way in the corner, a little off to the right, and it was like a crooked walkout. But besides the entrance, I thought the whole look of the event looked great. I thought it did not look shitty.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think seeing the fireworks adds like a special effect to being outside. And it feels, I mean, Disney's fireworks, I mean, the budget they have for fireworks can we count it, but it makes it feel special. Like WCW is supposed to be there. And like you mentioned the sign with WCW, even though the show was like, they pretty much set up in a parking lot.
Yeah.
It actually felt like they were supposed to be there with the signage. It wasn't just Disney presence. It was WCW's presence as well.
Very much so.
Next match here, we have the U.S. Championship on the line. Flair taking on Jim Powers. Of course, Flair has Elizabeth and Deborah and also Woman in his corners. So Jimmy Powers clearly has no chance in this match. It goes pretty quickly, 5 minutes and 40 seconds. All I have to say is this match was better than Flair's last match. But that's not saying that much. Jimmy Powers loses here. It's typical Flair match. Cut and paste here. Flair spots all over the place. Flair building up that U.S. title's legacy. And I wanted to mention here on air, and I know, not the biggest WWE guy over there, Mike Belcaster, but they're building some prestige to the U.S. Championship. How do you feel about that?
I'm happy that they're kind of bringing in history again. If these slow little trickles, I think, is what we're going to see. I don't think it's going to be a full-blown cut the switch, cut the shit, Tony. I think they're going to cut the shit and completely get crazy on WWE right away. But I think you're going to get little bits of it here and there. And the biggest tell will be when we have a War Games match on a WWE branded pay-per-view, not NXT. I bet you it's going to happen sooner than later. And it'll be good.
I agree. And I think that's going to be a direct shot at AEW as maybe not as competition, but saying this is our concept. We own the IP of it. You can't call it War Games. We can, and we'll do it better than you. And I love the NXT War Games. I also love the Blood and Guts matches. So I think it's gonna be really cool. Using the intellectual property of WCW, there's no harm in it. And the US title, it's funny that they're choosing that title to build up because the IC title was a WWF branded vehicle from the beginning. And obviously WWE now, the US Championship, look at the legacy of both titles. They're both historic, and you can go line by line. But I think the U.S. title has a little bit more oomph to the guys that have held it. They show the video package, but you go through them, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Booker T, all the way through. And the IC title has name after name. You go Bret Hart, Macho Man. So
absolutely,
toss them up. But I love that they're leaning into this history. And Flair holding a mid-card title here after just being world champion. So it's awesome.
Very awesome. And you know what? It's not going to do anything but raise the trust of the fans by utilizing the WCW IP on WWE TV, because I think that's something that's been lacking for years, even since they bought it. We've not seen that much throwback to it at all, besides the invasion, besides using, the Booker T and the NWO. I think that you're missing a lot of good history there and a lot of fun that you could have by owning that footage, by owning that library, by owning that just the whole concept of WCW. Like you said, we see these Halloween Havoc NXT things. It would be cool to see some of that on the main show. I'm not going to lie. I would love to see a Halloween Havoc pay-per-view being brought back, or World War III. Not that they will replace the Royal Rumble or anything like that, but why pull yourself away from something you bought, you own, it's in your library already. Make it fucking prominent for your fans. It's crazy.
100%. I mean, everything in wrestling didn't have to be created in the Stanford library. Absolutely. Obviously, WWF has stolen things all over the place. And I even look at, first thing that comes to my mind is Survivor Series in November. That has kind of run its course. Maybe take on the War Games thing for that. That's nothing more survival than that. And make it a staple, or Fall Brawl, like something like that would be very smart and strategic, because the Big Four is certainly lacking. And you can make the argument, I know that the Raw Down guys have, that Money in the Bank is the other fourth of the pay-per-view with the Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam. But Survivor Series, that spot in November, it's key. It's ripe for the picking. And I think if they use Fall Brawl, would be a great event to do, but also do a War Games match in there under the Survivor Series tent. It adds some appeal to it. Make it a thing that happens annually.
For sure. It's the biggest thing is going to be next year when September comes, and you're going to be WWE goes hog wild. And it's going to be Sturgis. Everybody's going to lose their shit. It's going to be the best. So
what about if they just go to like a Tesla charging station? They just have a whole bunch of Teslas. And it's just,
the complete opposite of hog
wild. We're out here at Elon Musk's parking lot.
You broke me. I got nothing to add to that. It's great.
Well, we went too far off the track anyway, so let's get back on. We went highway driving, not straight line driving on the actual tracks of the train. But we have the Horsemen crew without Chris Benoit backstage for an interview, and they talk about Hogan. Orange says the Horsemen never pretended or claimed to be role models, but Hogan did, and that's why he's scum. Mongo mentioned something about the apocalypse being here, and it's all about the four horsemen. Flair doesn't concern himself with Hogan. He just reminds us that the champ can go all night long. So Flair sticks to his guns. Again, the line here, and obviously Hogan doesn't appear on this first Nitro we're reviewing here. They're trying to keep Hogan in your psyche because there's really no payoff. Usually most wrestling shows would open the show with Hogan. And I think they probably would have been able to do that if they would have been doing it in a live arena. But since they're taping, they wanted to wait for the end of the 4 hours of taping.
Listen, I felt it did a service to it. It didn't take away from it. I thought it was more fun that they were like talking about Hogan, but not bringing Hogan in. It's less is more, you got, we could have people cut promos on Hogan all day long. That piece of shit, this motherfucker that fucking, he was the guy and now he's the bad guy. I think it adds more mystique to it. And then when Hogan finally comes up, there's a pure hatred from the fan base. Like, fuck this guy. Who does he think he is coming back from Thunder Down Under or whatever the fuck he was shooting at?
I think it was Overlord or something like that.
Oh God, yeah. No, nobody remembers that.
I have to go back to the newsletter from last week, but regardless, Hogan full
the
heel,
Tropic
real
Thunder.
Life
what the fuck was the Thunder show that he used to do at the beach?
Thunder in Paradise.
They're at Thunder in Paradise. There we go. So he was probably prepping for some more Thunder in Paradise.
Aren't we all? Take on the next match here with Benoit and Sergeant Craig Pittman with Teddy Long.
Listen, you got Benoit, you got Teddy Long. You go one-on-one with the crippler. I don't care about Sergeant Craig Pittman. I'm glad this match is only a short shy under 3 minutes long. Crippler crossface still is one of the best fucking finishes I think you could absolutely have in this business. I wish more people would incorporate it. I mean, we don't see it enough. It's a really good.
Danielson used it for like a match when he was doing the submissions where he was like making everybody submit with all weird submissions. Like I think he did the
cattle
Mexican
mutilation.
And then he did the crossface once, but I think there's still sort of a black cloud hanging over the move a little bit.
Listen, I mean, you could say the same thing about a belly to back suplex because Benoit did them all fucking day long. It's not really taking away from it. It's showing respect to the guy's art without really throwing back to it. You know what I mean? So
he didn't invent the crossface. He's not the only guy that's ever done it. So
yeah, absolutely. But much like Benoit normally does, he did not kill in this match. It was okay. It was a short match. We've seen better. We've seen plenty better. So it was interesting. Again, Sergeant Craig Pittman. I'm lost. I'm good. Got nothing for me.
Same, yeah. So 2 minutes and 43 seconds. It was there, as Hawk would say. Meh.
It was all right. Yeah.
All right, our main event here, well, kind of the main event match, I should say. We have Sting versus Arn Anderson, and this match goes 9 minutes and 38 seconds. They make sure the announce team makes sure that they say National Hall on the premises. And Disney can't stop them from getting in. I guess they got tickets there too. There's a feeling out process to begin. We got Sting hip tossing, splashing the ropes. Arn Anderson with his classic spots. Arn turns it into a Boston crab. He checks on the limo that showed near the ring. Sting catches Arn coming to the middle rope with a clothesline. Fast forward to the ending. We got Arn going for the DDT. Sting blocks it by grabbing the top rope. Gets the Scorpion Deathlock locked in. Gets the submission. This match, rough, if I'm being honest. There's some classic stuff here, but both these guys seem like they don't have a cohesion where they're good in the ring together. It's weird. They're both great wrestlers, but they can't click.
Yeah, it was weird, and I was expecting so much more out of Arn Anderson versus Sting, especially in this setup, this era. You think both guys are on the top of their fucking game, and it was just, it was okay. It went a little long, to be honest. I was expecting a better turnout. So that 10-minute mark for this could have probably went like 6 minutes, 5 minutes even, and may have had a better vibe, better closure.
So to end the show, we have Gene Okerlund getting a promo with Sting, which is probably Sting's one of his better promos I've ever seen.
Yes.
He had said that Hogan, he should have known that Hogan was the third man when Hulk didn't want to travel with Savage and Luger and himself. Hulk was too busy making movies and coming in for cameo appearances. So how much is true? How much is actually just character work for Sting? But you could tell there's some anger there. Yeah. He also said Sting made a mistake, but Hogan made a bigger mistake by rejecting the 3 demandments. He says it's a good thing Hulk told his fans to believe in something because he for sure couldn't believe in him. Hulk told the kids to stick it. No, you stick it, Hulk. You stick it. This was great baby face stuff from Sting. Yeah. Man, it was awesome. And then we have Randy Savage on the mic if you want to take it from here.
Oh my God. All I remember is watching it and Savage's neck looking like a French frog. Like it was just like, brother, you want to talk about something, Hogan, man? Yeah. Yeah. Obviously very pissed, very, very feeling it. It was just so much fun stuff, but like, yeah, it was a little over when Savage got on. It got a little over the top. I thought Sting did enough on his own. And that's a rarity coming out of my mouth because I'm the biggest Randy Savage mark in the world. But we get it. WCW is mad at Hulk Hogan. They made that very prominent this episode. So.
They shoved it down our throats. And just to get the Outsiders here on the show to end it, Gene Okerlund has the Outsiders with him, and Nash puts over Hogan and says he'll be at Nitro next week. Hall is still doing a Razor Ramon shtick, and the segment it has been brought to you by the Outsiders and Hulk Hogan. And Gene has no idea what that's supposed to mean. So this is the first introduction of NWO being its own brand. They show more still photos of Hogan turning on the world. Man, Hogan
not just one, not just 2, but 3 leg drops to Macho Man.
Hogan not being physically there on the program, that for me was rough. And I think obviously we watched it in a 2-shot, so we were able to get it automatically. But I can't imagine coming straight off of Bash to the Beach, watching that next week and being like, we didn't see it. It's like seeing Kenny Omega win the title with Don Callis and he wasn't on Dynamite the next week. It's just a crazy thing.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't feel like it took away too much from the show. I think that them mentioning it and keeping him a presence helped it a little bit, but they kind of overshot it towards the end here, especially this spot. Like, oh, he'll be there next week, brother. Everything's going to be Macho Man. Call it. Sting, call it. Like fucking lay it into him. And it was like, I mean, every promo almost had like a Hogan tie-in at some point, like Taskmaster. You know, the only thing short was Scott Steiner saying he appreciates how good of a technical wrestler Hulk Hogan is in that ring.
Absolutely, and with Hogan, I don't know what the reason is. I couldn't find the newsletter why he wasn't there for that first taping. Yeah, maybe because they taped it in bulk and they had him at that taping, but maybe he showed up later. And they wanted a live audience only to see him once. I don't know. I still would have opened it up or at least had at the end of the show do the promo because everyone's been waiting to see it. And if you don't pull the trigger on it, and again, this is all hindsight and it worked out for them. But for me, but then again, I'm not Eric Bischoff. I wasn't winning. The ratings were in 83 weeks. So I guess he did everything right. But not getting Hogan there right after the payoff of the Bash to the Beach turn, I guess it says more about Hogan being the degenerate that he became. He didn't have the guts to even show up. So I guess you could spin it that way, but I don't know. I was a little bit disappointed not to see him here on the 8th.
No, absolutely. I understand the disappointment, but I also don't think it was detrimental to the angle. I thought it was still good. He still had Hall and Nash there. You had everybody calling him a piece of shit, telling him to stick it. So it works out, and it pays off here in this next episode, which I'm super, super excited.
For sure. But I just imagine we're doing a WCW wrap-up show here on the Turnbuckle Tavern on following Monday night, and there was no Hogan. Yeah. We would have been. Tell me how Tom would have sounded if Hogan didn't show up.
Where the hell is this coward? Who is he? He first comes out and he like drops Macho Man 3 times, and he's sitting here. You're like, where's the payoff? Where is the payoff? And he's just a piece of shit. He comes out here and then he blows off the show like he doesn't even care about the business. Who the hell is Hulk Hogan? You can stick it, Hulk Hogan. You can stick it right to yourself, Hulkster.
And on the flagship, what would be Hawk's take on this?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hulk Hogan sucks. He's a loser. He'd look better if he wasn't in black and white. He should have kept the colorful rainbows on, man. He'd be over. You're losing money, man.
We should do a throwback night and actually just pretend it's happening real time. Maybe on April Fool's we'll do a show where we're just doing it like a random Monday Nitro.
It'd be great.
It'd throw people off.
Yeah. Good morning.
All right, so we're moving into the July 15th Nitro, and it's live, not live, but taped. Orlando, Florida, Disney MGM Studios. Our champions are all exactly the same, aside from our new Cruiserweight champion, Rey Mysterio, won the title back from DEAN Malenko, July 8th, 1996. So he's there. We have all the major WCW stars not here. Flair, Savage, Sting, Giant. They're all over in New Japan for a 2-day tour. Not here. What were your thoughts on those guys not being here? Did you feel their absence when you're watching the show, or would you have been like, you didn't know unless I told you?
No, not really. I thought they handled it pretty well. I mean, listen, it was, you got a lot of talent under your bush. You might as well use the branches. Leave them. Let the guys go for a little frolics once in a while. It doesn't kill the product. It's like a Bryan Danielson taking some time off to heal up there on Dynamite. You don't really miss him. You know he's coming back. You're excited for him to come back, but the time away also makes you want to see him more. So maybe that's, the theory behind all this.
Yeah, and it's also playing nice with New Japan Pro Wrestling. It creates a bond between the two companies, and it was a huge olive branch to say to New Japan, here's Flair, Savage, Sting, and Giant in the middle of our biggest angle of the year, and we're still going to live up on it. I mean, you could have went back on it and said, sorry, you can only have Alex Wright and maybe Flair, and we'll send over William Regal. But no, they sent over the guys they had promised, and they made it work. And like you mentioned, very similar to Dynamite, where they're so loaded with stardom that doesn't actually feel like they're missing.
For sure. It's comfortable still without them there.
So we have one of the matches on this card that I wanted to mention. We're going to get Savage versus Liger. And this is hour number 2, starting with Tony Schiavone, Larry Zbyszko. And the big topic they're talking about from the jump is, when will Hogan and the Outsiders show up? So they don't hype it. They were saying it's going to happen in a certain second hour, but then they start to become a little bit uneasy about when it will happen. I thought that added to the aesthetic that they're unpredictable.
Yeah, and it also makes it like, oh, well, Hogan's still that piece of shit. He'll show up whenever he wants to show up. He's not going to do it on time with us, so we can tell you when it's going to happen. And so it kind of added to him being gone from last week, building into like, we don't know where the fuck he is, but he will be here eventually.
So I want to take the lead here with the Steiners taking on our boys, Fire and Ice, not the Gum, but they're just a tag team.
The Gum's almost better. I'm full of saltiness today. It's great. You got Rick and Scott Steiner defeating Fire and Ice. It was okay. It was just like an way to fucking pull the brakes off of last week's very, very hot first hour. Going into this first hour, I feel like this first hour of Nitro was lacking in comparison to the last Nitro we were just talking about. So, good to see Norton. Norton didn't look terrible, but it was just a little bit of meh. And Teddy Long came out. It was cool. The Steiners, they picked up the win. I got nothing.
Yeah, there's some tension between Fire and Ice. So Norton and Ice Train definitely have some tension building up.
It's Fire and
They
Ice
toss in the match with the splash. Yeah, Fire and Ice don't get along. What are we?
There's a little water in the middle of it. God, who books this shit?
7 minutes and 39 seconds. Not a great match, as you mentioned, but you know, we're all just we're anxiously awaiting Hogan. And it seems like the fans are distracted, the announcers are distracted. We're just biding time until they show up. And we have Gene Okerlund interviewing Kevin Sullivan, Big Bubba, and Jimmy Hart, while Fire and Ice argue on their way out to the locker room. Pretty much the same stuff is said as last week about Hogan. So again, more conversations about, you know, what's going on with these guys. So again, trying to keep Hogan in our psyche. We know he's showing up tonight, but you know, they're doing a good job of making it very obvious that the roster is not liking what Hogan did, even if they're a heel or face.
Yeah, which again, I feel like the distance being away from that first episode, them kind of selling it, I feel like it adds to Hogan being this dastardly piece of shit. So it works out good. When Kevin Sullivan's calling you a piece of shit, you know you're a real piece of shit.
Buy the anti-Taskmaster shirt on our Teespring, guys. So we have some more stuff with Glacier, another Glacier promo, and then we have Teddy Long interrupting the argument between Scott Norton and Ice Train. He wants to manage them. All that stuff, but let's get into the match.
He's gonna put him in a fucking one-on-one triple threat match
with the Undertaker.
He's like, what are you doing? Me and Mark Calloway, man, he come for you.
Mean Mark.
Yeah.
So take the lead on Dean Malenko and Billy Kidman going at it here in our second match here on Nitro.
First off, Kidman comes out looking like $50,000, not quite $1 million, but he looks good. He's not quite the Kidman we know and love, but he's building his way there. Dean Malenko's coming out, fucking daddy. Jimmy Hart's chasing him out to the fucking ring, just yelling at his ear. He's Iceman, daddy. He's the good guy. He's just fucking. He's like the Jim Cornette that you can actually hate. You know, he just doesn't shut the fuck up, and it's nothing good coming out of his mouth. Not a bad match. Good stuff. Malenko, you can't really have a bad Malenko match. Like I said, Kidman not completely there, but you know, showing presence. Looked good. He's got that jacket that says Kidman on the back of it. Looked really nice. I was shocked by his aesthetic here. He's vibing, not looking bad. Obviously, Dean Malenko defeats him with that beautiful Texas cloverleaf, man. Nobody does it better. It was great. It was a short match, 5 minutes, 14 seconds. Not terrible. And Malenko, just a pistol of fucking energy here, which is crazy because Malenko's always out there, and Mr. You know, he's showing some love, man.
So Billy Kidman, heavy on the kid, light on the man at this point. He's a child here.
He's a baby.
What I do like is the ending of this match. You mentioned it was a Texas Cloverleaf, but before that, Kidman goes for the shooting star press, misses it, almost pisses Malenko off, and then he explodes on him. He hits the brainbuster, the power bomb, then a butterfly power bomb, and then directly puts him in the Texas Cloverleaf and gets a submission. Absolutely an intense ending there. It was really cool how he just absolutely went crazy.
Yeah.
They do hype up Dean Malenko facing Chris Benoit Hogwa, which should be a killer match. Two of the eventual radicals that will show up in WWF. That's going to be a good match.
No pun intended. It's going to be great.
Yeah, true.
But like Dean Malenko is giving you like these trainer vibes already. Like he gets in there, like you see him, you know, the shooting star press spot, and he misses it. And Malenko just like, fuck you, kid. Don't be doing that shit. Boom, boom, boom. Fucking just destroys him, man. I love it, man.
Yeah, and I still believe Dean Malenko is the unsung hero in this division where people are so into Psychosis, Rey Mysterio, and eventually Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, but rightfully so. But Dean Malenko is the heavy lifter. If you notice sort of the constant in all these matches, they kind of stop off wrestling Dean Malenko. They get a great match out of him, and then they continue. And I think it's no coincidence that Dean Malenko is that measuring bar for that division of the lighter weight wrestlers.
Absolutely, man.
And I wish Dean Malenko was on Instagram so I can tag him in some of the nice things we're saying about him.
I want to give the guy a hug. I love I've always respected him. I've always been so like No Mercy, or not No Mercy. WCW Revenge comes out. Fuck, I'm Dean Malenko 90% of the time. Texas Clover from fucking Hogan. I'm like, fuck you, NWO. Suck my fucking Dean Malenko.
Do you have N64 still hooked up in any capacity at the Belcaster household?
I do, and I have a lot of plethora of good shit going on Labor
Day weekend.
Oh yeah,
I think
it's
we have
going
to have a
down.
match.
Oh baby, we can make it happen, man. We got some Xbox controllers. We modernized a little bit, but like it's still everything you've ever wanted. Quote the Raven, nevermore.
Did you we missed you again on the wrap up show? We did miss you greatly there. Did you see any of the highlights of the AEW Fight Forever game that looked a lot like WCW Revenge? And
Big at first, my breath was taken away. I was a little upset by just the quality I was seeing, but then I thought about it a little bit more, and I'm fucking pumped for it. You know what? These guys, this is not just going to be a wrestling game. This is going to be a streamer's game. You got these mini games. You got a lot of fun stuff going into it with wrestling. I still crack up every time I see something like, oh, they're gonna have the barbed wire death match, and like this is Owen Hart's first game back. Brody Lee's gonna be in this game. You got these late great talents, and you're gonna be able to smash them with a fucking baseball bat and knock them across the fucking football field. It's gonna be wild. I'm not gonna shit on it until I get it in my hands. I bet it's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate what I said on the wrap-up show. I enjoy games, and this is just me, that are arcade-based, and they're games you can play round table with people, and it's just kind of easy to pick up. You don't have to like download skin. It's just like pick it up and play.
Yeah.
Similar to Here Comes the Pain with SmackDown, and also similar to WrestleMania on N64, and also even the Super Nintendo games. That's for me. I don't have to have these guys. You see the sweat dripping off Kenny Omega's head. I don't need that.
Yeah.
And I do trust Kenny Omega as, I guess, the principal creative behind this game. He's a video game guy, so I do trust his vision about what he wants it to be.
Yeah. When I say it's going to be a streamer's game, I mean it in a good way. Like it's going to be a party game. It's going to be something that you could play with your friends. You could take turns on an online game with your friends across the world and enjoy yourselves, and it not just be, oh, we have to do, a fucking 20-minute submission match, or we got to do this. Like, you have options to play these mini games. You have options to play matches. You could do barn burner matches if you want to. You could probably make it look realistic. I'm excited for it, man. I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about it, obviously, as it continues, and we could talk about those old games. Maybe we'll do a, old school N64, I don't know, conversation. I know that the Chick Foley show did a really good job talking about those games with Nintendo 64 and those games and stuff. So check that out with the Pod Foundation Chick Foley show. They dropped that. I think it was a Pod Warriors episode.
Yeah.
So do check that out. It was awesome.
Good plug.
Happy going down the nostalgia trip.
Yeah. I'm pumped, man.
We have our next match here, the WCW World Tag Team Championship, Harlem Heat being defended against Rough and Ready. So why are Rough and Ready, who are Dick Slater and Mike Enos, getting a tag title shot? We'll never know.
Yeah.
And it goes long, too. 7 minutes and 40 seconds. Sensational Sherry gets involved here. Colonel Parker's involved. Obviously, the history, Parker and Sherry with Harlem Heat. So this was sort of a storytelling match, but Harlem Heat thankfully gets the win here. The finish was an absolute disaster because Slater's covering, and then Sherry comes in and kisses Slater until he's disgusted that Booker easily rolls him up for the 3. The finish is insane because, like, why would you just get off the pin for a kiss? I don't know, man. It was just not a great match. And why are the tag titles on the line here?
No, and like way to take away from the ability of fucking Harlem Heat of all people. Like, this could have been a tag match between Fire and Ice and Rough and Ready, and that would make sense. Like, fuck it up like that. Don't be putting your Colonel Parkers in these kind of fucking matches. I don't want to see that shit. And you politely skipped over Kevin Green, much like I did.
We did skip that. Yeah, Kevin Green did show up on our screen. Yeah,
who cares? Who gives a shit? Is what I like to say. But yeah, the stupid finish, weird match, was not great. I've taken better piss breaks at shows and came back and gone, oh, this is good.
So they were trying to revisit the storyline that we had to endure in the beginning of January of 1996 with Parker and Sherry having up that love affair and whatever that was going on in March with the marriage. So I guess that ties into this, but the fact that we watched every Nitro still doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't care about it. So, one of those things doesn't age well, but that's okay. It's not like everything has to age perfectly. No,
absolutely. And, it just flowed right into the next thing, which was this beautiful Rey Mysterio highlight video package, which is shit I like to see. I enjoyed that. It was very good. Or wait, I'm sorry. It fucking...
Oh, yeah.
Rey
And then we have
Mysterio,
Kevin Green coming out again, which is kind of
that's
the
what
reason
threw me
why.
off.
That's why I skipped over
Like,
him
what?
originally coming out, and he comes out
Fuck
again,
him.
demands Mongo, takes off his shirt. Now he means business, and then he leaves. So Kevin Green
It was the exact same promo too, except he took his shirt off
as the bread of the sandwich of this shitty tag match. So it's like,
yeah, this
Kevin
was
Green sandwich.
It was a shit sandwich in the middle of Nitro. It was with
Not
a little
great.
dusting of Rey Mysterio, which must have been the bacon on the shit sandwich, right? Shit, man.
I would say so. All right, so take the lead here with Medusa taking on Molly Hasaka, who is from Japan. So there are some things that she worked with. Just to give you a background, LPWA. She also worked for Shimmer and other various indie promotions. So if you recognize her, that's where she's from.
Yeah, I'm not saying this was the greatest women's match of all time because it definitely wasn't. But this is this our first women's match on Shot of Nostalgia that we've covered. Like
I think it is because
at least on a
Medusa,
Nitro.
I think they had a Sherry match that was like a gimmick. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't a match. It wasn't like a
woman's.
Fuck.
Yeah, Medusa's been champion since she got here, and she has done nothing.
Yeah, so kudos. That part very entertained me. I was super excited to see women being utilized and put in the spotlight on Nitro, especially the last match of the first hour. It's a big spot. You know, you're trying to keep those asses in the seat to lead into hour 2. I don't think it was terrible. Medusa obviously gets the win. Hasaka was great. I thought it was fun to watch. It was different too, so it added a little bit of gas to the engine. I don't fucking know. It was something. It was better than nothing, you know.
This could have fit on Dynamite for real. Like I feel like this, like it could have been, like tomorrow. Like it could have been on Rampage.
This is Serena Deeb versus who's the girl that comes out dressed as Queen? Yeah.
Yeah, her, the one that does karaoke.
Her. Yeah, sure. But it was,
I want to say Io Shirai, but that's not her because that's Io Sky.
We'll call it Io Shirai. It's fine. It's good. She's that gimmick's dead anyway. It's but it was good. Like I said,
why can't I think of her name? Because Freems loves her. Like I know is Freems absolutely loves her from Shimmer and from Stardom.
It's the Queen chick. That's all I know her as. She comes out with the mustache. As
Freddie Mercury.
Yeah,
I don't get that gimmick either. That's for me.
I don't get half those gimmicks, but it's fun. Like, right? Sure, it works. But like I said, it was really cool to have a women's presence. We haven't seen a lot of that, especially since we started the whole year of '96. There's been a handful of segments with women. So I mean, this was a good one. This wasn't bad. Good way to kick off.
Maki Ito, by the way.
Maki Ito, thank you.
Shout out to twitch.tv/Freems. I know that's his favorite woman wrestler.
Wait, isn't Maki Ito the heavy metal one?
She's the one that's karaoke and comes dressed up as a queen, I thought.
Man, there's too many singing gimmicks.
Yeah, too many.
There's another one. Yeah, there's the heavy metal girl that was taking pictures of Dark Order and shit. I think that's Maki Ito.
Yeah, I don't know, but
whatever.
All we know it's not Molly Hasaka because she's a little bit older at this point. So
there you go.
We have hour number 2 starting here with Eric Bischoff and Bobby Heenan. So Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are putting up white sheets of the WCW letters to make them say NWO, and there's no Hogan as of yet. And they have fruity drinks in their hands, which was interesting because they are not ashamed to drink the tasty things. This is the start of wasn't spray painting, which we'll see almost on a weekly basis, but they're starting to sabotage WCW, that they are taking over not only in the ring, but they want to take over the brand.
Yeah, no, I literally love the shots of like Nash and Hall sitting up there, putting the sheets up there, like the matches. It was great, man. It was fun, and like you said, it's the initial first steps in the takeover. It was really good stuff, man.
So we have Ming taking on Arn Anderson in a short match. This is 8 minutes and 29 seconds. Not a lot really going on here.
Could have been shorter.
Ming gets the win with the kick of fear for the 1-2-3. Barbarian gets involved as well. Again, maybe it's Arn Anderson or something, and they have no chemistry at all.
Maybe Arn just doesn't work well at Disney. Maybe it's the humidity.
He needs the Disney
that last match was
bald spot.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was the drizzling shits, Arn. I'm sorry, buddy. Don't clock me or anything.
Yeah.
Good news. No guns allowed at Disney. So Ming escaped from Glock Anderson, and everything was good there.
I think what really took away from this match was the fact, and again, didn't take away because Nash and Hall are now watching the match, and the camera kept cutting to them, so it felt like this match was secondary. and the spots they did cut to were sort of ugly. I don't think this would have been match of choice that Hall and Nash decided to sit down and watch because it wasn't the greatest match on the card. But Ming picks up the win, which I was excited for because I am a big Ming or Haku fan.
Absolutely. That I will wholeheartedly agree with you.
All right, so we have Gene Okerlund in the back with Steve McMichael and Deborah. Mongo and Deb call the Carolina Panthers more than Kevin Green. Actually, no, he downs the. What did I even write here? Gene Okerlund talks to Steve McMichael and Deborah. Mongo and Deb down the Carolina Panthers more than Kevin Green. I don't know what I meant there.
It's okay. Kevin Green doesn't know what he's doing. Mongo fucking can't.
All you need to know is Kevin Green plays for the Carolina Panthers, and they're trying to tie that into relevance. And the Carolina Panthers at this point are only like a year old. I think they came into the league in 1995.
That's wild.
6. I think 6. So he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers, and he's fresh a part of that team. And WCW loves the Carolinas. So
and Mongo fucking hates anybody that's not Mongo. So it works out great.
Our next match, we'll get to take a shot of nostalgia, but I'll let you cover it because this is a classic match that would be done time and time again across many different promotions.
Yeah, the irony that it ended in a count out is crazy, but it was a hard hitting match. We had Eddie Guerrero. I guess he defeats Chris Benoit with the count out, but a very good, great match. And the irony, because of the history here that eventually gets told throughout their lives, so crazy that both men are not here anymore to talk about these kind of things either. Because I bet you there would be a Viva La Raza podcast with Eddie Guerrero hosted by Conrad Thompson, and it would be the Crossface podcast with Chris Benoit. It's fucking wild, man. This was a really good match, really fucking good back and forth, stiff work as you expect from both men. Thought it was fun, thought it was good. It went long, it was almost 10 minutes, but we got that shitty count out finish. Not complaining about it. I thought it was fun. There's a lot of good stuff back and forth between them, and you got the Four Horsemen's Chris Benoit with the fucking. It was like mullet versus mullet. It was great.
One spot that did pop me was the fact that Benoit locked in on Lion Tamer, and I don't think I've ever seen him use a version of Jericho's finisher at all. And maybe paying homage to his friend who's over in ECW, who will join shortly in 1996 in WCW. And I think we're going to get to see him in, I think it's September, October, he joins WCW. So we'll be here for Jericho. And it's very timely now that Jericho's bringing back the Lionheart on Dynamite on Wednesday at Quake at the Lake versus John Moxley. That should be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this match, exciting. I mean, you mentioned it is an absolute slugfest. We got arm drags, chops, and all that, power bombs. The crowd is super behind Eddie. Benoit clearly playing the heel. And it's also just funny to me how Flair, Sting, Giant, and Savage are in Japan, and these two aren't. And they are the ones that probably belong there and would mesh well with the most talent there, have the most experience there. But neither here nor there.
We could have pulled out a Tiger Mask versus Pegasus match out of nowhere in Japan, and people would have fucking popped hard for it.
And we will definitely be talking about ECW, and I think Eddie and Benoit make an appearance in ECW 1995, right? Is that am I right?
I think a lot of the gang's there. So good shit. Malenko's there too.
Yeah, and and I think Eddie's wearing his America tights in that one, right? He wears the United States tights with the jacket and all that. That's his man. That's cool.
Looking like a pair of Sandman Zubas.
All right, so we have to take a shot of nostalgia for the count out. Not quite a DQ, but we'll take what we can get here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a little dry country, so time to enjoy. I mean, we only had one last week too, so fucking let's.
Well, I've been sipping the whole time too. So
me too. Yeah, this is just the glass of gas is like what I like to call it.
All right, well, cheers.
Cheers,
count
man.
out. What a great match. This is a slugfest. It was a thing of beauty and artwork.
Yeah. No. To Eddie and Chris, they did their fucking job, man.
Oh yeah.
It's been sitting a while. When it warms up,
we're back in business here.
Woo!
So Eddie's war with the Four Horsemen is pretty cool. And then it's funny that this actually got built up as a side story to his eventual match with Flair at Hog Wild. I'd rather just sign up for Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit forever. And I love Flair, but I think we talked about Arn Anderson not having chemistry with anyone. Eddie Guerrero and Benoit were meant to be there. And also add Ray to this mix too. They're all just interchangeable. This one, DEAN Malenko. Interchangeable parts that just put on beauties of 5-star matches.
Yeah, it's literally like drop them in anywhere, and they'll work their fucking magic in the best way possible.
So we have our main event here. It's the World Television Championship. We thought for a second it might change hands. Thank God it didn't, actually. It's Lex Luger versus Big Bubba with Jimmy Hart. Take the lead on this one, my friend.
Daddy, you can't beat sexy Lex Luger, man. It was a lot more, less match, a lot more. Oh, what's going on with the NWO? We've seen that a lot in the second hour. Who gives a shit about the actual match? Hogan's there. It was 7 minutes, 47 seconds. The NWO's, hanging out, doing their thing. They're fucking. It's everything you're expecting. So the shenanigans from the outsiders. Hogan's there, brother. Wearing the black, looking bad, dude. It was good. It was a good ending to Nitro. We're finally getting the Hogan payoff. It was the match itself. So it was. We got a no contest. It's shot time again. Sorry, I'm fumbling.
It is shot time again. Before we get there, and obviously we know the history. We had Hogan shaking hands with Bubba, and I was like, oh, there's no way he joined. I don't even know if eventually he does join. I know that
I don't think
Giant
so.
is the first person to join the four of them as the four-person unit. But Bubba, I was like, thank God he didn't join. The outsiders attacking from behind. That was a cool little move there.
Yeah, could you imagine if somebody joined a week after it happened? How fucking weird that, like, in retrospect, what a stupid thing. This is why would you, of all people, you like tease Big Bubba? Fuck that shit.
Would have been awful. And it would have been awful. And I'm not even a huge fan of when the Giant joins. I think it should be a 3-person unit for a very long time. And then that's when they start to jump the shark. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, the Giant was a cool add-on, but I totally understand what you're saying. And I agree with you. It should have been this triangle of this force of fucking to be reckoned with until something happened. Find the weak link, then start adding people. They just were. Once the Giant came on board, it was like, who else can we get in the NWO? Fuck it, let's get Stevie Ray now. It was like, okay, cool.
So we have Gene Okerlund jumping in the ring to interview Hogan while the outsiders just hang around and listen. Hogan continues more of what he was saying the other week at Bash to the Beach, and he says Hogan was pissed for people booing him when he told them all about the 3 demandments that would make them successful. As for Sting, Hogan remembers meeting him at Venice Beach back 10 years ago when he was a skinny little bodybuilder and he was shaking in his boots. Hogan's sick and tired of hearing about Randy Savage blaming him for his divorce, all because he couldn't rise to the occasion. Hogan taking some cheap shots here, wasting no time to get into the heel mode. The only problem is that he thinks he's the greatest wrestler in the world. It's insane. Disney. Nothing more heel than that, brother. They start to throw more garbage in the ring, and then Hogan sends out a challenge to the Giant for the world title at Hog Wild, and then threatens to beat up the entire WCW right now. Babyface and heel alike head down to the ring, but we are out of time. And outside of the Benoit, Guerrero, Malenko stuff going on, pretty much a dull episode. It was a cool little segment at the end, but I probably, if I'm nitpicking, would have put this at the beginning of the first episode and then put everything else in place.
Yeah, the did leave a cool scene with the outsiders in the ring with the chairs and the rest of WCW guys coming out. It was nice. That was cool. Fuck them.
We didn't take our shot for the no contest with Lex and Bubba.
It's because Gene Okerlund was out of time, but let's do that.
All right. Here's another shot. Take it back with us. All right. Woo! Oh, yeah, it's good back to back. You like open up the track. I
like it a little cooled, but I mean, we had a lot to go through, so it's okay. It's just a little warm, so which is perfect. Perfect timing to go right into the chaser because we just took our shots.
That is absolutely correct, and we have about 12 minutes. And don't forget, in 12 minutes, we have before our time going live. Nick Storm and Young Anthony covering WrestleMania 4. So stick with us. We have some more Flashback Friday here in the tavern. Some good stuff. You do not want to miss it. Stay tuned to that. But before we get to them, we have to have the chaser cleanse our palate, talk about our favorite match or the moment of the last 2 nights of Nitro. All right. As I mentioned, every week we will continue to pick our favorite part of the 2 nights of Nitro. Belcaster, let you lead the way, whether it be 1 or 2 moments. Let me know what was your favorite.
Yeah, you know what? It's not. We'll give the NWO stuff at the end. Like you said, it should have been earlier on, but it was nice. But my absolute all-time pick is Eddie Guerrero versus Psychosis. You couldn't have gotten a better match both weeks. I thought it was fantastic. Really fun shit to watch. So kudos. Good shit to see Eddie working this rate again. And he's such a good opponent in Psychosis, man.
So I agree with that. And it was a toss up between the 3 matches involving the 4 of those guys we mentioned. You know, you could have picked Psychosis Eddie, you could have picked Eddie Benoit, but my pick is because of the historical reference of this with Cruiserweight Championship changing hands, Rey Mysterio defeating DEAN Malenko to open up the Nitro. And as I mentioned, it was a shorter match, probably would have added more time to it. I would have probably added another 5 minutes. These guys can go 15 easy. Rey Mysterio never really stopped moving. This match was awesome. And for historical reference, this is sort of one of those quintessential, what you remember in WCW of Rey Mysterio. Was the only other more famous thing is in 97 at Halloween Havoc against Eddie. I think that's the only other more famous moment.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Or the next week moment that we talked about, by the way.
No, they could have taken away a bunch of things from that Nitro and just made those 2 cruiserweight matches like top tier shit. And I would have been fine with that.
Absolutely. And before we move into closing the tab and we talk about the final wrap, I do have a question that popped in my mind. And of course, we're going to talk about it as it comes up in real time. What do you have to say about when the Hall of Fame happened and the New World Order goes in and they choose to pick Hall, Nash, and Hogan, of course, but they let Sean Waltman go in before, and Big Show, Paul White, the Giant is not included. And he was involved in the New World Order way before Sean Waltman.
It's bullshit. That typical WWE move. They were just letting Hunter's little boy get in with them, you know, the clique rises forever. So it total bullshit. Big Show should have been there way before Waltman.
Or if you're just going to do the 3 of them, do the 3 of them, and
exactly
don't have Waltman in it. And I love X-Pac. I love Sean Waltman, but I mean his Hall of Fame run was not with the NWO. It was with DX.
Yeah, I mean at that point you should have threw Bischoff in there instead of Waltman.
Right?
Fucking, you know, ridiculous.
Well, that
ridiculous.
That was the next thing that took the NWO to the next level, and was the only thing that could to up their game past the Hogan point. When you have the boss of bosses involved in this, then it takes the next level. But I don't think Six or X-Pac or Sean Waltman takes that to the next level. But that was just me. It just popped in my mind because as far as the lineage of who gets put into NWO, it gets really muddy after a bit.
No, absolutely.
It was a big deal when the Giant goes in, if I remember, and I know we'll get to that in a few weeks.
Yeah. No, you were 100% right. But it did get cluttered and fucked over, and we don't need that shit.
Yeah, and I think a big thing and Paul White has said that, as he was such a young kid at the time, that he probably would go back and say he didn't want to join the New World Order because of the fact that the reason why he was put in there is because they didn't want to put him over and get their win back. Because, you know, not spoiler when we cover Hog Wild coming up soon, I think it's in 2 weeks, episode 18, Hogan does beat the Giant for the title. And eventually the Giant should get his comeuppance on Hogan because that's the right thing to do. Babyface young star in the Giant who's going over to Japan and making WWE look good. He never really gets his win back from Hogan because he's now aligned with him. So that's when the New World Order starts to get messy. When you don't have anyone on the other side, that's a real threat.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, so let's move into closing the tab. The bar lights are coming on. The jukebox is playing really loud. Your ears are ringing. And let's close the tab and let's talk about next week coming up on Shot of Nostalgia. Woo! All right, so I wish I had the art on here because I have it ready to go, but I want to remind you guys next week's show is episode 17. We'll be airing August 12th, 2022, next Friday, and we'll be talking about the 7/22/96 Nitro and the 7/29 Nitro, and we'll be joined by a special guest again. One Bad Chad, talking about this is the famous incident that Rey Mysterio gets lawn darted into the production truck where actual security, actual EMTs, actual police show up to the scene. Really crazy moment that suspended reality and people didn't know what was real and what was fake. We talk about Hogan turning heel, but I think this is a huge pivotal moment. I think this is why Chad wants to come on here as a WCW growing up fan.
Yeah.
This is a huge thing that took the New World Order to the next level because people were like, I think they're really sort of going into business for themselves.
Yeah. No, it was a fucking shocker of a night. I'm excited to cover it. It's going to be fucking awesome.
And if you guys do know, and if you listen to the flagship, the Two Bad Chads are WCW fans through and through, growing up in the West Virginia area. So they would be, all over this at the time. This is right in the middle of their fandom. So they are the resident experts as far as this goes. I know Mike Belcaster is as well, but outside of the two of us here on this show, I would rely on them for a lot of WCW information because they were watching live and in person. If you guys went back and watched the debate from last week with the Extra Cooler Boys that were on, Matt and Nick, they actually talked with the Two Bad Chads. It was like WCW versus WWF with their perspectives. It was really cool when they were arguing about Tony Khan and Vince McMahon. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Could have a better guest to come on for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to have him on here. It was a nice having Matt on here, and we might have to change like the overlay a little bit to get the WCW 96 on the other side and move some things around. But it was cool having another perspective on here because we have great conversations, the two of us, but it's also nice to get someone outside because we're in it, man. We're living the dream, listening to everything going on with WCW 1996. So it's nice to have someone who just pops in for that one specific episode.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
So before we let you guys go, again, episode 18 after the Bad Chat will be August 5th, Nitro and Hog Wild. And then episode 19 will be a 3-parter. We have another Clash of Champions, which will be Clash of Champions 33. And we're covering Nitro from the 12th of August and the 19th. So some big episodes coming up. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show, do not forget season 2 of Shot Nostalgia will be coming November 2022. I believe the start date is November 11th. I believe that's what it says.
Yeah.
That's our first date there. We'll be covering Double Tables from ECW 1995. So big.
November 18th.
November 18th. So that will be the first. Stay tuned for more info on that. And again, it's far in the future, but mark your calendars and get hyped for it. We're going to do our best to cover ECW in its the full entirety because of the fact that, we know Peacock doesn't have the music rights, all that stuff. It becomes messy, but this is a journey I would like to be on for sure because it's stuff I did not watch as a kid, but I know people reference it with such great reverence.
Yeah.
So before we let you guys go again, let's get the shilling and go to the turnbuckletavern.com, leave a 5-star review. If you do, and it appears on Apple, let us know. And Mike Belcast will send you a sticker. I'm getting some Shot Nostalgia stickers made, so you guys can get those. And I'll also have those ready for you. If you guys send me the review on ACEFIELD Retro on Instagram, I will send them your way. Also, if you do buy a shirt as well, send me a picture of the shirt. I'll send you some stickers as well. Shot Nostalgia shirt. We'll include that Tavern Daddy shirt as a Shot Nostalgia shirt, even though they're not on here. They are the original Tavern Daddies, as I mentioned. So it is nostalgia. You got, I think it's Dustin Rhodes and Brian Pillman in that picture with the two young Chads.
Crazy.
Support the tavern. It goes a long way. Or if you don't like the Pro Wrestling store, and I'm not sure why you wouldn't, but there's some Teespring shirts on your way. Anti-Taskmaster. You got the Ming or Go Fuck Yourself shirt, which we adopted as our own. But yeah, man, a lot of good stuff going on here at the tavern. But before we go, Mike, give me what's going on. Get your stuff in quick while we have 20 minutes to approach before our time.
You know the drill. We're here for Tuesdays. We got Fig Night. Mondays, we got the fucking GCW show. Wednesday, the All Elite wrap up. Thursday, it's kind of a dry town, but you get the flagship, which is always a goddamn pleasure. And then you get us lovely selves. Friday, you get me in the morning on Audio View with good old Tom on Telto when we do the Turnbuckle Tavern sessions, which is going to be a great one. And make sure you guys check that out. And then make sure you're back here next week for more Shot of fucking Nostalgia, man. That's what's up. Go to the turnbuckletavern.com. Follow us everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah, as we mentioned, we'll be coming back Friday. And stay tuned in 2 minutes. We're going to be having before our time WrestleMania 4. We're going to have Anthony and Nick covering everything you need to know about the one-night tournament for the WWF Championship. If you don't know what happens already, I'm not going to spoil it. I'll let them tell you what happens because it's a great event. It really holds up. And AEW recently ran that Trump Plaza, which was renamed to something else. They had a Dynamite there, which was really cool to see wrestling back in Atlantic City, aside from GCW, with the Showboat hotel room. So
fuck yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we got for you. I really appreciate you joining us here and, giving us the support. We are so happy to be providing you guys and for you guys to be joining us on this journey. As always, I'm Stephen Acefield, live from the No Cell Studio, Turnbuckle Tavern, for Mike Belcaster, for ACEFIELD Retro, for Don, the freaking cat. We got to go. We're out of time.